take projection.
It's Friday morning, and you know what that means. It's time for another episode of the Alabama Slam Podcast. I'm your host, Corey Hanna.
What's going on, guys? It's Patrick Akers.
And we're going to jump right into some matches. No backstage, no rumors, none of that shit this week. We're going right into it. We're going to cover a couple of quick matches from Rampage on Friday, and then we're going to get into what was another excellent episode of Dynamite.
We are on the road to All Out, and I am excited as hell. I'm juiced up, man.
And haters can shut the fuck up, and we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But let's touch on first. We got the House of Black versus the Dark Order on Friday night. And if we weren't in this for the purpose of storytelling, obviously the House of Black would have won, right? I mean, they would murder the fucking Dark Order.
Right.
But you got to set up a story where you eventually get Hangman Page in there, and then he squares off against his former buddies in the finale or whatever. But for all intents and purposes, this was a good match. We're pretty high on House of Black on this show. I'm high on Johnny Hungy. I think he's funny as shit. But I'm not sure that the comedy element should work with Dark Order anymore. I kind of feel like at some point they got to disband it, but maybe they're just doing it for the memory of Brody Lee at this point. But anyway, that's not what we're going to talk about. Obviously, they put Dark Order over so that we could get Hangman versus his former friends, the Elite. Pretty good match overall, though. And you had called it, I think, on the podcast last week. You said Reynolds would get the pin. And that's exactly what happened. I texted you. I was like, you were exactly right. You called a couple of things. There was something else you called last night.
Well, as far as like the Miro stuff, like you could just, it's not like, that's the story they're telling, right? Like you can just see where the tea leaves are going.
Right.
Miro is not only on a warpath against House of Black, but I guess he's trying to murder God. Is that what he's doing?
It kind of sounds like what he's doing.
Or is AEW going to pull the trigger on? Were you watching WWE when Vince and Shane McMahon had a match against Shawn Michaels and God, and they put the spotlight?
No.
Go and look on YouTube if you don't know what I'm talking about. I think it was Vince and Shane versus Shawn Michaels and God, and they did a little spotlight on the apron to symbolize God. So that's every time Miro comes on screen, that's a little thing that I think about. But yeah, Miro's on this warpath, and we predicted Sting and Darby Allin going with it. So, you had to protect House of Black a little bit because, like you said, you can't convince me that Dark Order is a better tag team or a more viable threat than what House of Black is, the way they've been presented. But you have a guy like Miro come in, do the distraction, cost House of Black the win. Now you've spun an angle. They ran with the Preston Vance, skipping ahead a little bit. They ran with the Preston Vance injury angle, which is what kind of we and a lot of people thought they were going to do. So, yeah, I like Johnny Hungy. I like Alex Reynolds. People have called them jobbers.
They were in the top 5 in the tag teams just maybe a month ago.
Danhausen is a jobber.
Yeah.
Okay, and he's, like we've talked about on this podcast, he's the most over jobber of all time, and that's going to be his title. He has never been presented as a threat. Johnny Hungy and Alex Reynolds have been presented as threats. Johnny Hungy, he was in the ring with Punk, was he not?
Mm-hmm.
He's been in the ring with Punk. I think he's been a one-on-one match with Hangman maybe. So, they're an undersized underdog tag team. Underdog doesn't mean jobber.
Right.
Jobber, Danhausen, the Wingman, Peter Avalon, those guys are jobbers. Dark Order is not. They're just a lower card underdog tag team. And, you can, if you tell the right story, which is what I think they're doing, you can get those guys over and get them engaged in cool story arcs. And obviously you have somebody like Hangman who has the cachet of being a main eventer now fully in their corner. So, yeah, I'm invested in all these guys. I think House of Black and the Miro, Darby and Sting will be pretty cool too. That should be physical. Hopefully everything with Malachi is okay. I don't know if you've been keeping up with some of his social media stuff, but I guess he's been dealing with a pretty debilitating back injury that he thought might have to cause him to retire.
Oh, no.
Yes, he was posting that. There's some people that are saying like he might leave AEW and go back to WWE. Who knows? Who knows?
Get buried over there?
Well, it's just, it's all hope and optimism over there, and everything in AEW is on fire, right? So, and not in the good way, like in the gif of that dog that sits in the kitchen table. This is fine, yeah. That's what the grand narratives out there have been. So,
I mean, you also got people coming out like and squashing that too. Like FTR was like, "Hey, nobody backstage hates Punk except for the people that are fucking jealous and the people that have always hated Punk. They're like, everything's fine." I mean, I saw that headline yesterday.
Yeah, and I mean, not to get it derailed in the backstage stuff. People have egos. Anybody, if your workplace, wherever you work at, has egos, there's hierarchies. People don't like other kind of people. It doesn't mean that you can't do good work. And I mean, this has happened in pro wrestling for forever.
Right.
So
we just didn't have this much access to it.
Right. You didn't have Twitter, and everything was so instant. And kayfabe is dead. That's a big part of it too.
Right.
We're so exposed to the inner workings of the business. So you have those kind of things that happen. But yeah, good match on Rampage. A couple good matches on Rampage.
Yeah, I mean, let's get into the Claudio versus Dustin Rhodes match. Dustin can still go for a dude that's in his 50s. I mean, those fucking rolling power slams that he does look like they hurt.
I mean, it's such good technique. He's got that nickname, The Natural, for a reason. Always been kind of an underrated guy. I don't think he was ever going to be a main eventer. He obviously was in the shadow of his father. He was probably never going to be what his father was. Dusty had just a natural charisma about him that I don't think either one of his sons have. I think Cody probably has a different type of charisma. Not to say that Dustin is a fucking wooden 2x4, but it's just a different style, right? And also talking about Dustin's career, if he debuts that Goldust character today, and you put him back and he's in his 30s, that Goldust character is over as shit. Yeah. The Goldust character got the legs cut out from underneath it because it was in the 90s and it was playing on these, gay kind of stereotypes. He was kind of androgynous, and people got pissed off because it was the 90s, and so they completely cut the legs out from underneath the gimmick. If he does that character, I mean, you want to talk about groundbreaking gimmicks. That Goldust character is it. And then he has that Hollywood backlot brawl at that WrestleMania. That's a legendary match. So Dustin has had moments, but what this match was about is that the World Championship has always eluded him. And we kind of fantasy booked an element of putting Dustin in a little mini program with Jon Moxley. Obviously, that didn't happen, but you saw something similar. This is what we were kind of talking about, like the Cowboy having one last ride in him. He mentioned it in his promo leading up to it. I'll probably never be this close to the world title again. And him and Claudio just went out and they had a good match. Kind of got botched there a little bit at the end. I don't know what. Looks like Claudio might have got hit in the nuts or something like that, but I wouldn't mind seeing a couple more matches out of these guys. You would have to think Dustin kind of, he has other roles too. He's probably invaluable as a backstage coach to those men and women in that locker room.
Yeah, I mean, people are going to obviously look up to him, and you could tell he's got a presence. He's got a special relationship with Thunder Rosa. That's obvious. And I mean, there's people in that locker room that probably grew up watching him. He's been around for long enough that they were watching him when they were kids. Oh, no doubt, yeah. And I mean, for as short-lived as, not as short-lived as what that Goldust character was. The Goldust character evolved and became more comedic, but in the very beginning, it was very kind of mysterious. And you can see shades of that Goldust character and other characters that have come over with the years, and even just doing the cool stuff with the entrance, where it turns cinematic and stuff like that. So that's probably a big what if sliding door in wrestling history. If you take Goldust in the way that he was presented when he first came on the WWF and put him in 2022, I think that's a superstar legendary gimmick that they have in Goldust. But a big what if, and a little ahead of his time.
Way ahead of his time.
Yeah.
Way ahead of a time, for
a
sure.
lot of years, for sure.
For sure. The 90s were, for as much as everyone loves to, look back at with rose-colored glasses on the Attitude Era, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't age well and that would never fly in today's climate, and for good reason. You know, you go back and watch some of the stuff, and you're like, yeah, man, that's a little, you know. But we've evolved, and you know, wrestling characters evolve with it. But yeah, that's something I've always thought about. If Goldust in 2022, hell of a gimmick that was.
Yeah. Well, let's get right into Dynamite. You know, we don't want to pump them up too much because we kind of shit on a couple episodes just a couple of weeks ago, but they're on a pretty good run. I know last week was a banger. Probably, I think I called it probably the best episode of the year so far, and did a damn good job again last night. They switched a couple things up, you know, that you pointed out to me this afternoon with some of the narrative things that they did. I do find it a little odd that, you know, we had mentioned a few months, like maybe a month or so ago, that like, hey, they're coming out. You know, it's not like WWE where you get 20 minutes of promos and backstage bullshit before there's a match. You know, within 2 minutes, there's in AEW that somebody's fighting. Well, the last 3 weeks, there's been a promo to start the show, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, they're not doing 20 minutes worth of promos either, so that's another factor. But you know, you start off strong when you put a microphone in Jon Moxley's hand at the top of your show. And
I mean, the electricity was palpable in that arena. It was coming through the television screen. You know, getting a 50-50 Moxley CM Punk chant, you know, that was a big deal. And Moxley's promo, man, I mean, we say it every week, and it's a broken record. Believability is the biggest thing, I think, for any wrestling character. And man, every single thing that comes out of that man's mouth, you believe it. You believe that he believes it. I love you know, hey, sorry that Punk wasn't the guy you thought he was. Like
60 minutes,
just burying him. People were saying that's a heel promo. That's not a heel promo. What that promo is that's from a dude that's at the top of the mountain. You know, he's obviously not a heel. The crowd is not reacting to him as if he's a heel.
Yeah,
he's not breaking the rules.
You don't walk through the crowd for 3 minutes on your way to the ring if you're a heel.
Right. What he is he's telling you in so many words, I'm the fucking man. I've been the man around here. Here's a contract. Whoever wants to step up and get their ass whooped, come get it. You know, and
leave in the middle of the ring.
Yeah, and that, you know, one nitpick that I've seen, because, and we'll get into this Moxley Punk's stuff that went throughout this entire episode of Dynamite really has a lot of people split 50-50 online, with, you know, half the people saying it doesn't make any sense, it's rushed, yada yada yada. The other half of the people, which I think we're probably in that camp, are like, holy shit, this is great. But the one nitpick that I will say that I've seen that I think has a lot of credence to it is the fact that when Moxley puts the contract down, you know, the whole locker room isn't spilling out to come get it, because we talk about it all the time. Every single wrestler's main goal should be to become the world champion.
Yeah.
And so you have an open contract opportunity there.
Yeah, because I immediately thought, okay, let's just say somebody random, like Ricky Starks. I mean, Ricky Starks is not necessarily random, but let's say Starks runs out and grabs that contract. Then what?
Right.
How do you? Because I was thinking, if they do this, we all know that it's going to be Punk and Mox on Sunday night. So I was like, if Starks or somebody runs out and grabs contract, how do we get from there back to Punk and Moxley?
But you know, here's the thing: like, every kind of story has. And this is where we're expanding out from wrestling here. Every single story, you kind of got to give it a gimme a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
The hero that we're happen to be following in the story just happens to stumble across the magic sword, right? Well, like, and if you want to really pick it apart, you could be like, well, why wasn't these other 7 people? Well, because that's not the story we're telling. You know what I mean? So, like, we kind of have to give it a gimme in terms of this incident here, or else you could just pick everything apart.
Yeah. Well, then we see Ace still come out and grabs it and then walks to the back, and they make it a point to show him. They make it a point to name him and that he's a backstage, you know, worker. Well, I didn't know the history between he and Punk, so I just thought it was random. So, you know, that was interesting to me. I was like, well, obviously this is an angle they're going to play, and they're going to come back to this. But so, I mean, I did think it was neat that, like, it happened in different segments, you know, like, oh, they could have easily just had Punk walk out there and get it, but I thought it was kind of neat to have Steel come out and grab it, and then you're like, okay, well, now what?
And if you'll remember last week, I believe the first guy to come out to the ring to help Punk after the match was Ace Steel.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was featured prominently in the camera shots. He was right beside Punk. You know, we talked about that great camera shot they had where Punk is looking back at Moxley and the crowd's chanting his name, and you kind of get this feeling like, okay, he's maybe in his head he's like, all this was supposed to be me. I was supposed to be the guy, and you get that shot that we've talked about. You know, could feature prominently in some kind of video package to lend
when he turns heel.
When he turns heel, exactly. So. I love the Ace Steel angle of it. I guess we probably should just go ahead and talk about the Punk stuff that happened, even though it came a little bit down the show. We'll go ahead and skip to it because that's what we were talking about. Last night's episode really felt like it had a ton of direction to it. In that, okay, who are our biggest stars? Jon Moxley, CM Punk are our biggest stars. What's our biggest match on this show? It's Ospreay and Omega. So what are we going to do? We're going to have Moxley start the show. We're going to go a couple matches. In a couple of segments, we're going to have Punk come out.
Yeah, because Punk was probably around the 8 o'clock hour.
Right, and then we're going to have Moxley come back out. In between there, somewhere we'll talk to. They had a backstage interview with Ospreay, so you set that up. So I wish they keep on that sort of direction of propelling you through the show and giving you hints and giving you lead up to what's going to happen. But yeah, Punk comes out a little bit later in the show and he's looking distraught, and he is looking like
a little defeated, which he should be. He was talking about how he felt like he let all the fans down. Maybe he came back too soon. And then you have the moment with Ace Steel comes out, gives him the fucking Rocky-esque pep talk. And man, I slaps the shit out of him.
In my couch, just sitting. It was just me alone in my living room. I got fucking amped up. I was like, "Let's go." I don't give it. Is this manipulative? Sure it is, but I don't give a shit. I'm invested. I literally stood up off my couch and was just watching it, right? Like, I was just so enthralled by all this. And I mean, whatever, you know, I'll say this, find me better acting on television than what Ace Steel did in that promo.
I mean, convincing as hell. I didn't know shit about the guy. And it sold me quick. Right.
When wrestling is good, it's as good as anything else on television, you know? And we got a unbleeped F-bomb, which is funny considering, you know, the reports coming out of Warner wanting AEW to tone down the language. And then literally the next week, there's a fuck right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But it was convincing as hell, man. I love the line, like, if you forgot who you are, like, listen to these people. Let these people tell you. And I'm like, it's in Chicago, so you're going to get that. I love the Punk going up there, going back through the crowd.
Signing the contract.
Signing the contract. Because to me, like we've talked about, I think both of us feel like there's probably a Punk heel turn coming at some point, probably Sunday. And so, what a great send-off to Punk as a babyface, being with his people, and then the dagger in the heart's going to go even deeper come Sunday if they do what we think they might do, which is you turn Punk heel. And I was telling you before we started rolling, if I can just put on my conspiracy theory little tinfoil aluminum hat here. You know, we don't often talk about wrestlers and wrestling being an art form. But these guys are artists. And you have a lot of these guys, I think somebody like Punk, who thinks probably quite deeply about his character and the stories that he's involved in. I'm not saying this was his main motivation, but what I'm saying is in that 7-year absence when your mind starts turning about possible things, like if I came back to wrestling, what would I want to try to do? This is me speculating from a million miles away. I think one of CM Punk's big goals when he came back to wrestling was, can I get 15, 16,000 people in an arena in Chicago to boo me out of the building?
Right.
Because if you think about it, that is the only thing in his career he's never been able to do. Even when he was a heel, when they went to Chicago, those fans chanted his names. And I think, I brought the analogy to you, prior to 1982, Bruce Springsteen was the biggest fucking rock star in the world, right? Selling out grand tours all over the world. What does he do in 82? He gets a guitar, He goes in his garage. He makes bleak-ass, sad-ass, depressing Nebraska. And it's a complete 180 from what he was doing, right? The Stadium Rock. I think CM Punk is a little bit like that. I think he's kind of got the itch, like, if I could pull this off, holy shit, like, do I have enough in me as a professional wrestling artist? Like, can I get these people to hate me when they've loved me for so long? I think that's a main motivation, and if they pull the trigger on that and he accomplishes it.
Let him be a heel for a year, and then they'll put it all out back in Chicago next September.
Yeah, because obviously you can't make Punk a heel when he comes back, right? He's been gone for 7 years. This is the hero that's returning. People are going to love him.
Yeah, you've had a year to have Punk as Punk, right?
But think about every single program he's had. They've all been baby faces. Even the one guy in MJF, who I think we didn't have this podcast when the MJF CM Punk stuff was going on. I think that's the best professional wrestling story that's been told in the last decade.
Yeah.
And I think that's a legendary feud that will probably continue as it's going, but just in the little snippet that we had it for those few months, that's going to be something that your favorite wrestler 10, 15, 20 years from now is going to talk about seeing that match and that angle.
Yeah, because you even pointed out to me, you're like, just think about what was one of the main motives and driving forces behind that story was MJF telling Punk, hey, you're the bad guy.
Yeah,
I'm not the bad guy here. You're the bad guy.
Yeah, you even had MJF crying in the middle of the ring, right? Yeah. That's something that heels have never historically done. So when I'm saying that, like, I think a heel turn's coming, it's not just me pulling it out of my ass, or like wanting it. And if it doesn't happen, cool. If they tell another awesome story, like, I'll just enjoy it, right? You know, the guy in the front row, shout out to him last night. Yeah. Just enjoy wrestling.
Yeah, I think that's probably the name of this episode is just enjoy wrestling.
Just enjoy wrestling, and I'll enjoy it. But I'm saying, like, I think this is a deeper level of a story than what we're used to seeing in pro wrestling. Pro wrestling used to have operated on this very surface level of narrative, right? And I think what is happening with all these people that are like, oh, I don't like this, the backstage stuff is too much, yada, yada. I think there's experimentation happening. And there are guys who, because they're not on the road constantly in AEW, making the towns every single night, you can kind of think about your character a little bit more. And you can kind of have these deep sort of discussions that they're probably having with Tony Khan and amongst themselves about really trying to do something different and do something groundbreaking. And, you keep hearing things floated out there. JR in an interview was like, man, come all out. Like, people are going to really be surprised by what we do. Like, I think something big is cooking. Yeah. And if you just read the tea leaves, go all the way back. Like, let's take the CM Punk Eddie Kingston feud, for example. If you had no kind of context about what CM Punk was at all, and you were just making a judgment based off the two guys in that ring at that time, CM Punk is obviously the heel. No question about it, right? Like, if you take everything out, CM Punk, MJF, right? You just talk about those two guys in that one little feud. Who's the bad guy? Well, it's probably CM Punk, right? Or at least you can see the motivation for the bad guy doing what he did. So
you think, there's been a lot of speculation online today, and, we all kind of figured or saw if you're going to bring MJF back soon, why not do it in Chicago and have MJF and have CM Punk be some sort of factor behind the return. And then, so there's been a lot of speculation today about him coming back this weekend, and I've avoided reading those articles because I'm like, okay, fine, if he's coming back, I kind of saw it, but I don't want to know them. I don't want to know. I want it to be a surprise when it happens.
So let's talk about some of the So there's only a couple outcomes that can actually happen at All Out, right? One, Moxley beats Punk clean in the middle of the ring again.
Probably not in 3 minutes this time.
Probably not in 3 minutes. They probably play up the whole, CM Punk trying to battle back with an injury, but he can't overcome Jon Moxley, right?
Because he's fine. He limped a little bit to the ring last night, and then he looked pretty sprightly running around in the crowd last night.
Yeah, he's working. Yeah. All the people that thought this was a legitimate injury, and, even some fans last week going as far as being like, oh, this is CM Punk leaving the company. Okay, guys, he's making multi-million-dollars a year.
Yeah.
He has carte blanche to do whatever he wants. He ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
He ain't dressing in the hallway of the Civic Center where they're
No. So, like, Yeah, you got Moxley beating Punk clean. Would that be surprising? Yeah, it'd be surprising to me. If nothing else happened, if there wasn't any kind of afterbirth where then CM Punk attacked Moxley and stuff. But still, I wouldn't be pissed off because I'd be like, oh, this is not this is a catalyst for something else. 2, you have Punk beats Moxley without cheating in any kind of way. Would I believe that? I think that's the most far-fetched one out of all these conclusions that they could have to this. Again, if Punk beats Moxley, it's not going to be the end of this feud. They'll do a third one. And still, I'll kind of just hang back and see how they land this plane, But I think that outcome opens itself up a little bit more to criticism because people are going to be like, okay, well, what are we doing here? I think people will feel a little bit more uneasy at that way. Or, third, Punk beats Moxley by cheating. And depending on how bad that happens, I think you could see some boos rain down. Now, if he goes way dastardly with it, could he get booed out of the building? I don't know if that's a long shot, but last night Moxley got a hell of a lot of chance for his name. Or the fourth option is you do bring an MJF back, and an MJF, who does he screw? Does he screw over Moxley? And then you're like, oh, are Punk and MJF aligned together? Does he screw over CM Punk? I think that's probably not going to happen because we just saw babyface CM Punk versus heel MJF. And I don't think when MJF comes back, I don't think he comes back as a heel. That's also a little prediction I have. I think when he comes back, he's coming back as a babyface.
I mean, he's going to get a hell of a pop, whichever.
He'll get a hell of a pop anyway when he comes back, just because everyone that comes back gets a pop, just that shock factor, right? But I don't know if MJF, do we want to keep seeing MJF as a heel? I don't. I mean, based off how we've conditioned the AEW audience to feel about certain wrestlers, whenever good professional wrestling happens and good shit happens, people start cheering for you.
FTR.
Ricky Starks.
Wardlow.
You know what I mean? And now Wardlow had a little bit more narrative.
Sure.
He turned on MJF, that sort of stuff.
But he was getting little.
He was getting pops anyway, yeah.
Yeah, before that.
So, I think MJF's, you fucking Mark promo, I think people were just like, holy shit, this is great television. And he's always been awesome in the ring, so we'll see, man. Again, there's a lot of balls up in the air, and I would just caution a lot of people from taking such a hardline stance on this story right now when we're not at the end of it yet.
Yep.
And again, I think my prediction is, if you really want my prediction, what I think they might do is they might do a Civil War type storyline in AEW where you have CM Punk and his guys versus either be it Moxley or whoever and their guys. That's why I'm saying, could Punk and MJF team up with each other?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of story you would need to tell there to make that make sense. But I think it's there. You can connect those dots and make that make sense.
I mean, maybe Mox is beating the shit out of Punk. MJF runs down, tosses him the DDP ring. Punk clocks Mox upside the head, and then MJF just turns and walks out.
Yeah, or you could have, we could have a situation where we never see who tosses whoever, whatever.
Yeah.
Could be just a dude in a hoodie. Who was that? Security runs him off.
Yeah.
Was that MJF? Was that somebody else?
Yeah. We see a hint of a Burberry scarf.
Yeah, or anything like that. I will. AEW has not let us down in these big moments yet.
Yeah, I mean their pay-per-views are fucking solid. A little long usually, but they're fucking great.
It's the middle portion of this stuff where they have to elongate stories that you and I are kind of like, this is, there are better ways to do this. But when the lights are on bright and this is a go home show for a pay-per-view, I mean, they smash that shit out of the park 9 times out of 10. So, and when you talk about two guys like Moxley and CM Punk, you're talking about two of wrestling's best storytellers. And so I'll kind of hang on this ride and see where they go with it.
Yeah. Well, I just realized we're almost 30 minutes in, and we haven't really gotten to anything else
But that's
yet.
big to talk about. I mean,
We're talking about the
big
main
thing,
event
like,
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't want to just like blow over that, but we do need to probably move along. Let's go backwards a little bit. Let's go to we see Daniel Garcia backstage talking to Jericho. He says, I'm loyal to you guys. I appreciate you. I'm not gonna let you down, et cetera, right? And we're like, okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, we see it, right?
Yeah.
Something's gonna pop off. Well, then let's go on now to next was Bryan Danielson versus Jake Hager. I mean, looking at these two guys in the ring, we know Danielson can go. Hager's a big dude. He's not been much of a wrestler's record is not great, but like, you look at him, you're like, Hager might whoop the shit out of him, and he did for a little while, but ultimately, Danielson's gonna get the pin. Then Jericho Appreciation Society attacks Bryan Danielson, and then Wheeler Yuta and Claudio come out, catch him, try to save him, and then when Jericho's trying to get the chair over Danielson's head, guess who runs out, stops him from putting the chair on his head? Daniel Garcia.
Yeah, I mean, just talking about the match, we talked about it last week. Bryan Danielson, yet again, I think the best of all time, in-ring performer. Every single week, he keeps solidifying that case in my eyes. The whole time I was watching this, though, I was like, man, if Jake Hager had an ounce of charisma, he would be AEW's Brock Lesnar. I mean, he's got the collegiate record. He's got the MMA background. He's believable as somebody that could beat the shit out of somebody. His problem is you look at him and you just go, okay.
Yeah.
It just doesn't have anything going for him. But, this Jericho Danielson Garcia stuff, we'll see how it culminates in the pay-per-view. I expect the match to be really good. I mean, we've talked about it before. Jericho at almost, I think he's 51. I mean, he's in hell of a shape.
Yeah.
After people gave him hell for having a pot belly on Twitter and, whatever diet he's doing, it's working for him. He has turned back the clock.
Yeah, and Danielson came in to AEW in way greater shape than the last time I remember seeing him.
Yeah.
Because when I was watching him in WWE a few years ago when he was champion, I was like, this dude might ought to hit the gym a little bit.
But again, that's that difference in schedule, He's not working 5 times a night.
Right.
Or not 5 times a night, 5 times a week.
Yeah.
It's once a week. And so you can
fly home.
A lot of off time, yeah. You can take care of yourself. And we both love Garcia. Again, his mannerisms and facials last night were just on point. He's just good, man, and I'm invested in this story too. We'll see how it goes. I still think that probably Garcia needs to strike out on his own at the end of this.
Yeah, I figure that's where it's headed. Right?
I think so too. Yeah, I think so.
Something's going to happen because Danielson's not completely in the right on this. You could tell he's nudging Garcia a little bit.
Well, he still comes out of the heel tunnel.
Yeah.
He's still kind of that. Even last night where he gave him the little knock on the thigh, right, and give him that little shit-eating grin at the end of it. Like, it's just great stuff, man.
Yeah, I figure that's what's going to happen. It's like Garcia's outshining the rest of the JAS, so they can't necessarily have him back in Jericho every week now, right? You got to put him on his own.
Yeah.
And what do we call this? The divorce match for All Out.
The divorce parents, yeah.
Divorce parents.
The custody of Garcia, we're fighting for it.
Yeah. So next up, we had they're trying or wanted to obviously establish Wingman Wednesday. That was pretty brief, and then Morrissey came back out again, but with a little twist, and that Stokely very quickly followed him out, and Stokely handed him a card. We had only seen Morrissey once before, about, 2 or 3 months ago?
Yeah, I believe if I remember correctly, he was the hired hand for MJF against Wardlow. Was that right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
I think that was right. So, whatever Stokely is cooking here, they now have their massive heater.
Yeah.
And, kudos to Morrissey, man. He was big cast in WWE. He's had his struggles with addiction have been well documented. He's been very open about that in interviews and stuff. and he has turned his life around. And I mean, my God, he looks like a fucking monster.
Yeah.
He never had. If he had that physique in WWE, he'd have been the fucking world champion in 6 months. You know, Vince would have been like, "My God, this fucking kid." You know, so like he looks massive, and you know, I hope that this is. We haven't got a Morrissey as All Elite graphic yet, so we don't know what his contract looks like.
Yeah. You got to figure though, if Stokely's handed him a card, they've got some plans.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So you don't. Whatever Stokely is cooking, like we talked about last week, I don't think Stokely is going to be the main driver of that faction, unless they're trying to put Stokely in like a Bobby Heenan type role, which I guess they could do. You know, and Bobby Heenan was the draw of that stable. I still think it's going to be anchored by a main eventer, whether that's MJF, whether it's Punk, whether it's somebody else that hasn't debuted yet. And so I guess Morrissey will then go off television until he comes back, because Ethan Page got the card, went off television. Gun Club got the card, went off television. Moriarty, he's gone from television. Do they debut something at All Out this Sunday? Who knows?
You gotta figure. That's what I texted Eddie last night. Shout out Eddie Forsyth every week. I figure we see MJF. I figure we get the culmination of whatever Stokely's working on. Probably all pops off on Sunday.
Again, too, you know, this is something we haven't talked about. I'll mention it real quick. Dave Meltzer talked about a couple weeks ago. You know, these TV deals, the contract talks are about to start happening. And he mentioned September is a really big month for him. So I think you're going to see AEW push a lot of their chips to the front center of the table and try to get that big bag from Warner Media.
I mean, it's going to be ripe opportunity for it. Come right off of pay-per-view
so
at the first of the month. And
if it's all hands on deck, that means, you know, you also need Maxwell Jacob Friedman to come in at some point this month. So
what better time?
Yep.
So we see Dark Order backstage. We see, Preston Vance is hurt. I think you would theorize that they would maybe have a match this week, and then Evil Uno would be hurt probably, right?
Yeah.
And then they would bring in Hangman, but they just skipped that and brought Hangman in last night.
Yeah.
We touched on that briefly at the top of the show, so I don't think there's too much.
You missed the best part, though. Fucking Jose hit Preston with a taser, and then just told him everything's cool. Like, he just did a little shh, or like, everything's cool. Like, I'm just gonna fucking taser the shit out of you. Andrade continues to be, for the amount of he's not supposed to be comical, obviously. He cracks me up every time he opens his mouth, because it is this, like, he's such a badass in the suit, right?
Right.
Like, we talk about it every week.
And in the ring.
And in the ring, he's just fucking jacked as shit, and everything is physical with him, and he looks like he could whoop your ass. But he has this, like, it's a comedic demeanor to me when he's backstage in these promos, where he's, like, trying to buy people.
Yeah.
And he's just so slick. And then
he
all
just
of a
hands
sudden,
him the money.
And then there was just an explosion of violence out of nowhere. There's a taser. He's beating his ass with a crutch. I'm like, okay. So this was great. I continue to think Andrade is underutilized. He's in the ladder match come Sunday. Does he win?
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Who do you think is the mystery person for the ladder match? Is that they don't bring MJF back for the ladder match?
MJF, to me, narratively doesn't make sense with Tony Khan giving him a spot, because MJF's motivation now is that he hates Tony and he hates what AEW has become. And so why would Tony award him any kind of title shot or any kind of opportunity, right? The story with MJF has to be MJF inserts himself in such a way into some kind of story where TK's hands are then tied and he has to put MJF on television, right? So, like, is the ladder match a Samoa Joe? Is it a debut of somebody new?
It could be Joe, because he's been out for a minute, and there's been rumors that he's coming back pretty soon. So,
but to me, if you just look at the field of guys, right? Because remember, whoever wins this match is going to get a championship opportunity. I mean, again, putting the fantasy booker hat on for a second, is it Samoa Joe at the Casino Battle Royale? And instead of having MJF interject himself in the main event match, does MJF jump the barricade, get up in the ladder, grab the fucking whatever the hell, the ring, and just get out.
Yeah.
And has just stolen an opportunity. Could it be something like that? I don't know. Again, fantasy booking, who knows? But like, I think out of all those guys in the event, in the field so far, it either kind of has to be Andrade or the Joker, because you're not going to give an opportunity to Dante Martin or Ray Phoenix, or I don't see how those guys play into the main event scene at all.
Yeah.
So
next up, Britt Baker, Jamie Hayter versus Hikaru Shida, and Toni Storm. Banger.
This was excellent. This was everything that we've wanted to see from the women's division. They got put on a prime spot in the show, and they got the crowd on their side, and the crowd ate that up. And I continue to tell everybody every week, if you do not look at Jamie Hayter inside the ring and be like, this girl is a damn superstar, and put the rocket on her, I don't know what you're looking at. Because she is absolutely phenomenal. Shout out to Hikaru Shida. I think people have been sleeping on her, how good she is. And she's like, fuck it.
I forgot she was a champ, honestly. I think we talked about her last week, but up until then, I had forgotten that she was the champ during the, what were essentially house shows during the pandemic.
Because she hasn't been presented as that kind of way.
And she was off TV for a little while,
Yeah. But again, like we talk about, you have to present these women in a certain type of way. It's never been the talent, I don't think. It's always been the way that they're positioned on the card. They just haven't had a lot of stuff to do. And Toni is over. Shida, I think, is somebody that you can get a lot of people on her side because she's got a cool look. As JR said, it's Americanized.
Yeah, but her music pops too, though.
Did you catch that JR thing? Let me read this quote.
Oh, shit.
I caught it down. This is what JR said. I don't know if you caught it.
No,
Talking about Shida. He said, her makeup and attire has gotten more Americanized, and I mean that in a positive sense. And it was just crickets from the commentary team because nobody knew how to respond to that. I don't even know what that means. What is it, like, Americanized? Like, whatever.
Oh, JR.
Yeah, JR. Different time. We'll cut him some slack. But, like, Shida's great. Britt Baker, I think, is probably out of that 4 women in the ring, she probably is, fourth in line in terms of ring work. But in terms of charisma and mic skills, she's probably head and shoulders above all those women, right? Which is why she's constantly positioned the way she is.
Yeah.
But this was great. I can't wait for the 4-way match.
Yeah.
They might steal the show because I think some of those women in that ring were like, hey, everybody's giving us shit. Like, there's a lot of, like, fuck you energy.
Yeah.
I think that women's locker room can have.
There's a lot to prove, I think, too. I mean, we've shit on the women's division, but we've mostly shit on the direction of the women's division.
And I think it's more so they got something they want to prove to the audience.
Yeah.
But also they got something they want to prove to management.
Yeah.
Because who's calling all the shots here? It's management. And so if you go out there in a 4-way and you steal the show, I think that might be my sleeper pick for show stealer come Sunday.
Yeah.
I'll go over this 4-way women's match.
Could be.
I think they got something to prove out there.
So next up, we had Jim Ross with Christian Cage and Jungle Boy. I mean, again, it's subtle, but Christian Cage is like, man, I didn't mean to hurt. I wasn't trying to hurt your feelings.
He's great.
Just slathering it on, right?
Yeah.
And then we saw a little bit of fire out of Jungle Boy last night, right? Because I almost texted you because it wasn't over the top, but he was looking like he was a ticking time bomb.
But again, think about how that segment was shot.
Yeah,
it's pre-recorded,
right? And that was a factor.
You got to protect people, right? People gave Thunder Rosa, they talked about CM Punk is vacating his title. He gets an in-ring promo. Thunder Rosa is vacating hers. She gets a backstage promo for 3 minutes. Like, AEW hates women, and it's like, no, Thunder Rosa doesn't have the type of mic skills that Punk has, and so you have to protect these people.
Yeah, you can hand Punk Mike and just
it's the Paul Heyman thing. You got to hide people's weaknesses and you got to showcase their strengths.
Yeah, and
so you put them in a pre-recorded segment where Jungle Boy can get a couple takes, or you can cut it down and to get his best parts. And yeah, I think that was a perfect segment last night. You were probably spot on a couple weeks ago when you said that this thing, maybe they just brought Jungle Boy back too soon, and that's kind of why some of this has lost its luster. And that's probably a good call. I think they probably could have done something where Jungle Boy comes back and then Christian Cage puts him back on the shelf, right? Maybe injures him again.
Yeah.
Something to that effect. And then, you and I have both talked about, Jack Perry needs to come out. And what was the closing?
Lose the Jungle Boy.
Lose the Jungle Boy.
Yeah.
Jack Perry.
I was a few minutes ahead of you. I think you started a little bit later than I did because I texted you and I was like, hey, are you watching? Because you've been calling this for a hot minute. Like, hey, we got to lose Jungle Boy. My man's is 25.
Right.
Let's lose Jungle Boy.
And so hopefully on the graphic come Sunday,
yeah,
Jungle Jack Perry. I hope that's what it says.
I mean, it said Jungle Boy versus Christian Cage last night. But, I was like, they could have played the whole, we didn't have time to change it because it basically showed up immediately after this segment, right? But, I mean, that's how it ended. He's like, you're not going to see Jungle Boy this Sunday. He said, you're not going to wrestle Jungle Boy. You're going to fight Jack Perry.
And that's perfect.
Cut.
That's what we've been looking for. And I think you and I both we talked about how this is really kind of a trial run for Jungle Boy here. Like, hey, can we invest in this dude to where we elevate him above where he's at? Because right now he's a mid-card guy. But can he reach that sort of upper mid-card, lower main event level in AEW? And, the jury's still out for me. I think I haven't been that impressed by what I've seen with this feud.
I mean, they could come out and tear the fucking place down.
Well, the work rate has never been in question with him, right? He's always been incredible. But like we talk about every week, it's not the moves. It's everything else that gets people to invest in your character. And so we saw a little bit more fire last night. Hopefully that translates over, and you would imagine he's going over Christian Cage. And then Luchasaurus, whatever happens with him, obviously we'll probably get some kind of payoff for that story come Sunday too. And, maybe Jungle Boy hopefully turns into Jack Perry, and Jack Perry can take some of this momentum, and maybe he's got a TNT title run in him, or, All-Atlantic title run, or maybe he's got something that we can give him another opportunity to see what he's got.
So next up was essentially a squash match with FTR and Wardlow versus some of the Ring of Honor guys. I didn't write their names down. Pardon me for that one. But, I mean, there's not much to touch on this segment. It was the weakest point of the night. Didn't really serve any purpose in moving anything forward. Yeah,
I mean, you got to get FTR out in the front of the Chicago crowd. You want to get Wardlow out in front of the Chicago crowd. There was nothing with Jay Lethal and Motor City Machine Guns, right? It was literally just a squash, and they kept going.
Yeah.
So
then I wrote down that we had Moxley again because we talked about Punk coming back out earlier, but we didn't talk about Mox did come out that one more time right before Dante versus Roosh versus Phoenix versus Yuta. I mean, Moxley again. I didn't write down what he said, but there was one or two lines, and I was like, I don't know how. I know, like, he probably had some of it pre-planned, but I was like, this was fucking genius. Some of the stuff he was saying.
And I like that they kept them separate throughout the whole night, because if not, then if they get off face-to-face, they have to get physical, right? And so I don't think you want to do that again. And so it was kind of, you build it up where you keep them separate throughout the whole time. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm still geeked out for this match Sunday. I can't wait to see what happens.
So let's go to the four-way, sort of a preview of the ladder match with some of the contestants. Mostly uneventful. I mean, you're always going to get a little bit of spectacle when you got Dante Martin in the ring. Same thing with Phoenix. And then, to me, I thought the coolest part of it was Yuta's pin move.
Yeah.
That shit looked like it hurt.
It's having a finishing pin move is so cool, and that his seatbelt looks, it legitimately looks like you can't kick out of it when he hits it.
I mean,
and it's how he gets into it is so smooth. He executes it so well. I mean, you want to talk about a guy who has really elevated his status in AEW. I mean, from where Wheeler Yuta was at in January to where he's at now.
Yeah, because his record is not great. He only has, like, in the low single digits more wins than he has losses.
Yeah, but I mean, he's been elevated.
But he's been like he's been on one since probably May.
Yeah, somewhere around there. You know,
when he started getting the heat.
We'll have to go back and see when we were bitching about his old ring gear. You know, with just the tennis shoes, and he's changed that up now, man.
Being a fifth wheel to best friends.
Yeah, and now he feels like he's a legitimate member of Blackpool Combat Club. And you know, I think he'll have a good showing in this match. I think him and Garcia, was it next week on Dynamite? They're doing Ring of Honor Pure Championship. Yeah. That'll probably be another banger of a match.
Yeah, man, that's gonna be a good ass Wednesday. I mean, I don't know what else they put on the card for that, and we'll find out some more. I'm sure Sunday night, but you know, I mean, those two guys that's a fucking main event for a Wednesday night.
Yeah, and then elsewhere in this match, you know, you talk about Roosh, talk about Phoenix. We talk about Phoenix every week. I mean, the inventiveness of his moveset and his ability to use the ropes the way he does. I mean, he's a hell of a wrestler, and Dante Martin's up there. Well, I mean, his explosive athletic ability.
Yeah, he needs to put on a little more muscle, but that kid is fucking good.
And again, that's probably, you know, he's improved. He's improved his strikes. And so when we talk about all the time, you know, it's no different than any other sport, right? You have rookies, and when you have these rookies in football, you hope that, you know, you see improvement week after week, and those guys elevate themselves into Pro Bowl status and All-Pros and Hall of Famers and stuff. And I'm not saying that...
You listening, Malik Willis?
Hopefully Malik Willis, yeah. And I'm not saying Dante Martin's going to be a world champion, but, like, you want to hitch your wagon to guys who are improving every week and have a little bit of dog in them. Now, he needs to work on his character and his, believability inside the ring. But I mean, he's a natural babyface, man. People want to root for him, and Roosh just goes. He has one speed, and that's all out. No pun intended, I guess. Like, he's gonna go 1,000 miles an hour, and that's how he's gonna do it. So I like all these guys, and they'll probably tear the house down in this ladder match. So it's time for the main event. I know that's a Rampage line. But, I mean, look, I don't know that you could have booked a better main event leading into your pay-per-view for your top show on Wednesday. The fucking Elite versus United Empire. And right now, I could not tell you the name of the other two dudes behind Will Ospreay. Is it Kyle Fletcher, and I don't know the other guy. Mark Davis, maybe?
Fletcher sounds right.
Yeah, I think it's Mark Davis.
But
it doesn't matter. They're not what
it doesn't
what
fucking
you're watching.
matter. Yeah. I mean, it's Will Ospreay's team.
You wanna hear my notes that I wrote down during this match?
Yeah.
They're very elaborate. I just wrote ... my God. That's all I wrote.
I mean, yeah, what else do you say? I know we're a podcast and we're supposed to be talking and breaking it down, but
he's incredible.
Yeah.
Will Ospreay is incredible.
Yeah.
I don't know what else. All the shit that he's talked. I mean,
back that shit up, and he's done it.
Backed it up. You see it in the ring when he comes out. We talk about it all the time. When you walk out of that tunnel, I need to know that you're a star within 2 seconds. And when he comes out with the title around his neck and that big ass robe, you look at that dude and you're like, he's a star.
Yeah.
Like. And then when he gets in the ring, I mean, hell, he backs it up.
Yeah. His
athletic ability, the sky twister he did from the top rope to the floor, like it's a thing of beauty, man. It looks effortless, and I love his aggression. Like, you know, they played up this whole thing. Him and Kenny don't have this good relationship, and what does he do? They don't start off with a fucking lockup. He goes right for that motherfucker. Hits him, bashing him, physical. He's working the ribs. He rips off the damn Kenny's compression shirt. Yeah, which for all of the people that were like, oh, Kenny got out of shape, and that's why he's wearing the compression shirt. No, he is working, guys. This was always a work, okay? It is storytelling. Like,
I don't think Kenny looks out of shape either, for whatever that's worth.
No, he doesn't look out. He was never out of shape. He's not coming back if he looks out of shape.
Kenny was never the most fucking ripped dude in the ring anyway. But Kenny
he was jacked.
But I mean, Kenny didn't look out of shape either, though.
Yeah, he was jacked. I mean, he looked jacked.
Yeah.
When he came out with the compression shirt last week, I was like, oh, he's still in phenomenal shape. Like, he's not coming back. The reason they're doing this trios tournament now, and the reason they put off the Young Bucks versus FTR tag match, was because Kenny was back and in shape.
If Kenny was out of
That's what they're
shape, he
doing.
wouldn't be wearing a fucking compression shirt that squeezes your skin. He'd be wearing a fucking t-shirt.
And he wouldn't be on television.
Right.
They just wouldn't have done this at this point, you know.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, Kenny and Ospreay, give me more. Give me as much as you want. Like if they're going to set this thing up for Wrestle Kingdom in January in New Japan and Kenny goes over there, like I'll buy that pay-per-view.
Yeah, I mean that's a no-brainer.
And the move, what was it? Was it Nick Jackson? Looked like he tried to monkey flip Ospreay, and Ospreay took him off the ropes, and then they turned it into a Canadian destroyer.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, 5 stars.
Yeah.
All the way.
And then fucking Ospreay hit Kenny with the knee.
Yeah.
I mean, there was so much about it.
But like that's what AEW can do. These guys can go 1,000 miles an hour because they don't have to be in fucking Boise, Idaho on Saturday. You know what I mean? And doing these house shows. Like these WWE guys, it's not that they can't do this style. It's just that if you do that style 4 times a week, you will literally kill yourself.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
Yeah, Darby Allin doesn't exist in WWE world.
No, but like Ospreay and Omega and these guys are doing it one night a week. And so for that one night, you're going to go balls out. And you can wrestle this kind of high impact, fast paced style. And you can present a product that's different from what the competition's doing.
Yeah, Ospreay tweeted this morning that he's done with AEW for the immediate future or whatever.
Can I say this too?
Yeah.
You know, Tony Khan bitched last week. It came out. He was bitching about WWE, you know, quote unquote, tampering with his talent, right? If I'm Tony Khan, last night I sat down with Ospreay and I looked him in his eyes and I said, when your contract runs out, you come to me. I will pay you whatever they're paying you. I'll double it.
Yeah, quit fucking around and come play in America.
And come over here. I'd tamper the shit out of it for Will Ospreay.
Yeah.
And whatever, you know, rules for thee, not rules for me. That's how I play by this shit. You know what I mean? I got a business I'm trying to run, and I need Will Ospreay on television every single week here in America.
Yeah, I don't think this is the last we see of he and Omega. You know, he said he's done with AEW. That doesn't mean that Kenny ain't going to New Japan.
And if Kenny goes to New Japan and Wrestle Kingdom, I think if I'm TK, I'm like, hey, maybe we let Ospreay go over. You know, you want to keep that relationship with New Japan. So, you know, scratch my back, I'll scratch yours type of thing. And Kenny can take a loss in a singles match against Will Ospreay in Japan, right?
Because, I mean, let's be honest, like, there's going to be some diehards that'll watch it, but most people won't ever fucking know unless they happen to bring it up on Dynamite.
Right.
And be like, Kenny went to New Japan, wrestled in Wrestle Kingdom, and got beat. Most people aren't going to fucking know that.
But then, like, again, you know, these working relationships, these politics are so important. You know, or do we kick this thing all the way down to Forbidden Door 2? And do we do Forbidden Door 2 in Japan?
Yeah.
That'd be kind of
they've
cool.
already said they're doing another Forbidden Door next year. So
Yeah, and, you know, we've talked about, we like the fact that AEW has this sort of global influence where, like, even you saw last night, Sheeta having a new title. I like that because it makes it seem like these athletes are, you know, when you're watching AEW, you literally are watching the best of the best around the world compete against each other.
yeah.
You know, and I'm sure people will probably bitch about that. Oh, another title in AEW. Well, I mean, she's not defending it, so like it's cool for them to have, I think.
Well, if I were a smart man, I would have made a list of all the matches so we could kind of go run down and give our predictions. But I didn't fucking do that. So let's just kind of, as we think about it, who do you think? We'll start coming up with some. Who do you think's going over? You got Starks over Hobbs, probably, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're, I think the next guy that kind of elevates himself into that main event level scene would be a Ricky Starks.
Yeah.
And so now, you know, you let Starks go over Hobbs. You try to figure out some way to work him into some kind of main event level program. I'm not saying he immediately needs to come out of this and challenge for the belt, but like, is his next feud with Jericho? Is his next feud with Danielson? Is it somebody of that level caliber? Because, you know, we talk about it all the time. Ricky's got everything. I mean, the mic work, the in-ring work, the look, the character, it's all there.
So trios winners.
I mean, it's probably going to be the Elite, right?
Yeah.
And you would imagine that at the end of it, you see a feel-good moment of Hangman and Kenny maybe doing some kind of embrace, that you form the Elite back, whatever. Does Adam Cole insert himself into the trios match?
It's possible.
That's another thing where, Adam Cole and not Bobby Fish now, because Bobby Fish...
Yeah, you don't have the Undisputed Era really anymore.
Yeah,
right?
Bobby Fish, his contract wasn't renewed.
He
so
gone.
now you have Kyle O'Reilly and Adam Cole, but so do they come back and, maybe jump Kenny and Hangman after the fact? That's still out there. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I would imagine that the goal was probably always put the trios belt on Kenny and the Bucks.
Yeah. So we talked about Punk and Mox. I think briefly mentioned last week the women's title.
Yeah, I would have Jamie Hayter look like a star and somehow get screwed out of it by Britt Baker. I'd put the belt on Britt Baker and then have Tony and Britt go after the belt. Hayter cost Britt the title in the same way that Britt cost Hayter the title, and now you've spun it off. You've broken up Britt and Hayter into a feud, and now you got Tony and Thunder Rosa that can go back and forth.
Yeah.
Unless...
I kind of feel like they'll put it on Tony. That's just some intuition I got, but I don't know why.
they probably will. And I wouldn't be mad at that either. You get the feel-good moment of Tony being the champion.
Yeah.
I just think if you're trying to get to Tony and Thunder anyway, because we know that's going to happen, whoever wins this belt eventually is going to face Thunder to unify the belts. Why not try to get a couple stories out of this feud, right? Why not try to spin and try to get some other women's angles
that's
going?
probably the smart thing, and keep moving this women's division a little forward.
Yeah, because at some point you have to split off Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter.
Yeah.
It has to happen.
Yeah. So Danielson versus Garcia.
Or Danielson versus
Jericho.
I could see Jericho winning, honestly.
Yeah. I think they'll go Danielson. I don't know.
Only because here's the thing. Danielson got the ups on Jericho last night. And so if you go by logic, whoever on the go-home show is looking up at the lights, they're usually the one that goes over at the pay-per-view.
True.
So.
Let's see. What else do we have?
Swerve and the Acclaimed.
Yeah.
Probably Swerve in Our Glory.
Yeah.
Although, if you wanted to split them up, I'm not mad at it.
Yeah, I feel like they were sort of a go between title reign anyway, right?
Everyone thought this was going to be FTR and the Bucks, right? So this FTR thing is still dangling out here, where they still don't have these AEW tag team titles. So do you have FTR versus Swerve in Our Glory at some point down the line? Swerve and Keith Lee have talked about they're the Kobe and Shaq. But the thing about Kobe and Shaq is at some point they couldn't fucking stand each other and they had to get, Shaq went to Miami. Yeah. So do they play up that angle? I'm just glad that the Acclaimed are on this pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Those guys started on Dark and just slowly but surely got themselves over to where now it's cool that they're being rewarded in this spot that they are.
Yeah.
So
and it hasn't taken them that long.
And it's good motivation for some of these other guys and women that are on the roster that are like, hey, I'm only on Dark, but like if I hit, like I have the opportunity here to make something of it. And if I can connect with the fans on something that I do, be it either with my ring work or with some kind of gimmick or character trait that I have, I will be rewarded. Tony and management will reward you with a big-time spot. They did the same thing for Ricky Starks.
Yeah.
Look at where Ricky's at. So I'm just happy for the Acclaimed, and I don't see them going over Swerve in Our Glory, but you never know. They could do something cool here.
So probably Jack Perry over Christian Cage.
Yeah, you'd have to, I think.
Jungle Jack
Perry, yeah.
I know there's several more matches, but I'll be damned if I can think of any more of them off the top of my head.
We got Kingston and Ishii on the...
Oh, in the pre-card?
Pre-card, yeah.
Yeah.
That'll probably be just a 10-minute chop fest, and
yeah,
Kingston would go Casino Battle Royale. I mean, I think we gave our prediction already, either Andrade or whoever the Joker is.
Yeah. I
Go
think they
over
added
that.
is Hook and somebody for the pre-card?
Angelo Parker.
Angelo Parker. Yeah.
We haven't talked about that much, but if you've listened to any of the promos from 2.0, it's funny that their whole thing is just like, you walk around the back and you look cool, and we don't like that, so we're going to fight you. Like, I think that's that's a pretty humorous Matt Menard with his crazy. He reminds me of just a character out of the Goodfellas, man. Just like an extra. They should make somebody should make a shirt with the Goodfellas movie poster, but just have 2.0 and like Matt Menard and Angela Parker in it somehow.
Yeah.
Somebody's also been doing a cut of Matt Menard's promos that he does every week, where they're like in a group, but they just focus on him solely. With his facials and his work, because he mouths stuff to the camera off. It's great, man. Like he's
got
so
on my
damn
fucking
good.
nerves at first, but it's funny as shit.
It's a thing where it gets on your nerves, but he's so good at executing it.
Yeah.
Like his little thing when he was like, "You want me to take a peek?" And he would peel back the curtain like every week, like that's.
We didn't see Anna Jay in the last couple of weeks. And
I know, I'm disappointed.
I missed her choking people out.
Maybe they'll do something All Out or Rampage where she just
maybe
choke
Rampage,
somebody out.
yeah.
She got a shirt made in a merchandise, so that's good.
Yeah.
I think that her choking people out it will get over
Yeah.
slowly but surely. If you keep doing it,
Yeah.
people will get on board.
Oh, it's
with
over
that.
shit with me already.
Yeah.
That shit is hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into what's done up real good for the week. I'll start off because I did not think that this would be done up real good. I'm going to be completely honest. I am 2 episodes into House of the Dragon. I told you a month ago, I said I am not wasting my fucking time on a Game of Thrones show. I won't do it. I don't care. I don't give a fuck about what happened 200 years before. Well, I got roped into it reluctantly. I watched the first episode. I was like, yeah, it was fine. A couple of nights later, I was shit hammered drunk on bourbon, and I'd been watching TV for hours, or I don't know what I was doing. My wife was like, hey, I'm going to watch this Dragon show again. I said, cool, put it on. I'm going to sit here on my phone. Doom scroll. Well, it wasn't very long. I was completely taken in on the show, and then I got done. I was like, okay, I'm in. And then I watched the second episode, and they got me. I don't know fucking how, but I'm in. I may fucking regret it at the end of all of it, but I'm in. And that's what's done up real good for me.
I just have such, not to make light of this because this is a serious thing, but I have such PTSD when it comes to the damn Game of Thrones. It was so bad. You could tell that they were mailing this thing in for after we have built this whole thing up, right?
Yeah.
And they just mail it in that final season. Yeah. I just don't know if I can dedicate that much of my life. It was every Sunday. It was appointment viewing.
Yeah.
We went to a friend's house. This was before we had kids, so we could do things like that.
You could
Where
do
just
shit
on
like that, yeah.
On a Sunday, you can go hang out at somebody's house and do all that stuff. But, that's what we did for those last episodes or that last season. I'm like, I don't want to bring myself to do this again. This is the relationship where it's toxic and you break up and then that person is back on your doorstep again and you're like, I know I shouldn't do this.
I didn't think that many fucking people would watch the show. But the numbers were pretty fucking big.
Well, it was the biggest debut that HBO had, right?
Yeah, and I was like, are you fucking serious?
Again, they're roping in. People, they only remember the good times, right? That's what it is. It's with anything. That's all nostalgia is, right?
Yeah.
Nostalgia is you only remember the good times. You never remember any of the bad. And for 7 seasons, Game of Thrones was A++++.
Yeah.
And so now that Benioff and Wise, I don't think they have anything to do with this new show.
No. And I think George R. R. Martin is actively involved in the show.
I don't want to do it. I don't want. They're going to do this to me too.
It's fucking good.
It's kind of like how my relationship with WWE is. I haven't been watching WWE.
Yeah.
Now I've been kind of watching WWE. They're doing some things that are pulling me in. This Dexter Lumis thing with him stalking the Miz. It's kind of getting me. And the stuff they're doing with Rollins and Riddle, it's kind of getting me.
I may tune in for that on Saturday.
The stuff they're doing with I think the Sami Zayn bloodline stuff is some of the most entertaining stuff they've done in forever. Sami Zayn he's so good with everything he does. So like, I do this with WWE all the time. I'll go away, I'll leave for like 5 years. And then, yeah, it's that relationship. They're back on the doorstep. And I don't remember all the stupid shit where it was like, man, I really got invested in The Fiend and Kevin Owens, and then he gets squashed by Goldberg. And then you're like, oh, Triple H is in charge. Oh, they say the F-bomb on Raw like they're pulling the John Jones, Daniel Cormier stuff. They're pulling from real life. People sound like actual men that want to rip each other's throats out. And I'm like, these sons of bitches are doing it to me.
Yeah.
Although, real quick on Monday Night Raw, and then I'll get into what's done up real good. They still open with these stupid-ass 20-minute promos. And Monday Night Raw opened up with the Judgment Day. First of all, they should just be Judgment Day. They shouldn't be the Judgment Day, but whatever. And they're giving their promo. I guess they're feuding with Edge. Edge comes out and then just starts... He starts getting into these insults that don't make any sense, right? He calls them emo, and he's like, oh, y'all are just mad because you didn't get tickets for My Chemical Romance. Which is a good zinger, I guess, but then you realize, like, hey, dude, didn't you start this group?
Yeah.
Wasn't you the one that was coming out in purple and all this shit? Like, ain't you the one that did the emo leather? Like,
I think they re-signed Braun Strowman today, too. I think they're expecting him to show up on Monday.
oh, really?
Yeah. Just FYI.
Okay,
I didn't know if you had seen that.
I didn't see that. I'm still, like, really fast-forwarding. I don't watch any of the matches on Monday Night Raw because they're like... their style for regular television doesn't really get me engaged. The matches they do on the pay-per-views every now and then are, premium live events. I wish they would just say Clash at the Castle every time you say it. You don't say premium live event, Clash at the Castle. Like, it's just... Anyway, whatever. We're getting back in the weights. I'm still watching WWE again. If it gets really good, maybe we'll talk about it a little bit more on this podcast. I'm hoping that maybe they do something with Drew McIntyre and he wins against Roman Reigns. People like Roman Reigns. I mean, whatever.
What time does that kick off? Did you?
I think noon.
Okay. Right in the middle of college football.
Yeah. But anyway, my done up real good is the new John Moreland record. I don't know if listeners are familiar with John Moreland. I know you're a big fan of Moreland.
I wouldn't say a big fan. I really like some of his stuff. It's not a thing I listen to very often, but when I do, I'm all in on it.
I think a good characterization of John Moreland is he's your favorite artist's favorite artist.
Yeah.
Probably is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And his new record is really good. And if you don't know, it's singer-songwriter, Americana type stuff. His last two records, though, he's been playing with some synth pads and some ambient effects and some electronic elements, and he's kind of meshing this style, kind of like a Bon Iver. I don't know if you, Bon Iver, that kind of guy. So it's just good, and I mean, the songwriting is top notch, as always.
Yeah, I mean, what little I do know about Moreland is years ago I had played in a band. I quit. I rejoined the band a few years later, and when I rejoined the band was around the time, I forget which record it was on at this point, but he had a song called Nobody Gives a Damn About Songs Anymore.
Yeah. And
I was like, let's take this song and let's turn it into a louder rock song, right? Yeah. And I thought I had him convinced, and we'd played mostly originals. We played a cover every now and then we'd play a cover or two. And then, like a year later, Sadler Vaden covered it and put it on one of his records. And fucking killed it, because, of course, it's Sadler Vaden. He's going to do that shit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, when you say it's your favorite songwriter, I mean, you know, Sadler's a gunslinger and Jason Isbell in the 400 unit. And you got dudes like him covering John Moreland on their record. Yeah. You know.
So, yeah, the new record's great. Generational Dust, I think, is my favorite song off of it. I mean, yeah, it's poetry, it's heartfelt, it's ironic at times. He's got it all, man. If he was a wrestler, he'd be fucking Ricky Starks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you make that comparison. Just got it all, can do everything. Yeah. So that's it, John Moreland. I think the record's called Birds on the Ceiling. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah, man. Well, now's the time of the show where you probably turn it off, but we will ask you to stick around another couple minutes and hear us out, man. We are on Instagram and Twitter at Alabama Slam Pod. We are on Facebook under our main network site at the Alabama Take. TheAlabamaTake.com is a little small network of writers and podcasters founded by Blaine Duncan and T.D. Wood and alumnus of the network, Caleb Johnson, Cr. T.D. Wood is starting up a sports podcast launched this week called Taking on Sports. Blaine Duncan is the host of Taking It Down, a weekly pop culture podcast. We've got our little podcast. My wife has a new podcast launching next month called Check Your Shelf. And I don't think that I've actually mentioned it here before, but me and a couple of my best friends in the whole world are starting a Star Wars podcast called We Are a Star War. So that'll be coming out in September. Look us up on TeePublic. You can get Alabama Slam t-shirts. You can get coffee mugs. You can get stickers. You can also get them for the Alabama Take. And any of the profits or proceeds or whatever you want to call it, they're made from those shirts goes back into the website and keeping the website maintained at thealabamatake.com. So we'd appreciate it. Order a shirt, take a picture of it, send it to us. That'd be fucking awesome. And if you got 2 seconds, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts / iTunes, whatever the fuck they're calling it now. Just go in, put 2 or 3 words, hey, great podcast. Any sort of activity like that will help us move up in the ratings and get more eyes and ears on us, and we would surely appreciate it. And this time next week, we'll be recapping what we hope and think will be a fucking awesome pay-per-view.
It should be, they only do 4 of these, so they feel monumental, they feel big. It's AEW season. We go around from All Out, we'll go to Grand Slam, and then a few months later, we'll go into Full Gear. So this is the time that AEW heats up. Yeah, good timing on this one. It's the weekend before NFL kicks off, and it's on a holiday weekend, so we don't have to fucking come to work at 8 o'clock the next morning. Roll Tide. Roll Tide, y'all. We'll see y'all next week.